Welcome, Geoff, to Coexistent Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I am so glad to actually have you here. We met through another Facebook group for autistic musicians, and I was listening to some of your stories, and I was like, he has to be on the podcast. So you have, I feel like your life was just amazing, and you just had a lot of adventures, and you have a lot of learnings and teachings to show and bring. So I wanted to first start off with your name. Can you give a background of your name?
Sure. My name is Geoff Saavedra. The last name might sound a little familiar. The author of Don Quixote, his name is Cervantes de Saavedra. Mm-hmm. We don't know for sure, but my dad's family did come from Ecuador, but from Spain before that, so it's possible that I might be related in some distant past. But my family is from Ecuador, and my dad and mother met here. They're both from Ecuador, but they met here in New York. And yeah, so I was born here.
That's amazing. I'm also, because I don't think they're going to be able to see, but like the spelling of your name is Geoff, and I thought that was very interesting. But not only your real name, but your stage name is even more interesting. It's like Titosaurus or something like
that. It's not necessarily a stage name. I'm two one-man bands. You found me under the name of Titanosaur, which is what I'm currently promoting. But this is the third year that I've been doing Titanosaur. But I've been doing the Raygun Girls since 2004, originally as an actual full band, but since 2009, just myself.
Okay, so this is totally off topic because man, I saw your life is so interesting. You have two bands. So my next question, I'm gonna have to combine these two questions, is what led you to music, and then explain why you got two bands.
Well, what led me to music? I mean, I'm going to go into tons of different areas. I mean, you've spoken to a lot of people with ADD and autism, so probably
we get the
vibe. So music. Okay. Well, I was just diagnosed with autism. That's a complicated answer as well. So 14 years ago, I for some reason, I've always had an interest in autism. When I was a kid in college, I went to introductory psychology courses trying to figure out about it, not knowing that I was autistic, not knowing that was a possibility for myself. Then about 14 years ago, I was still researching it, always listening to bits about it. So I at that point I knew that I was autistic, but I didn't get diagnosed until this past a year ago, last December. So that sort of explains my interest in music. I've always had an interest in music. It's been part of my life. It's something that I can't not listen to. I can't not do. Mm-hmm. There's a picture of me as a toddler with a bass guitar on my lap. I grew up in a house with my mother, my grandmother, my uncles. My uncles were only about 15 years older than me. That's a complicated answer as well. So I grew up in the house with them, and they had a huge record collection in the 80s. So that's where I was introduced to tons of different styles of music. For whatever reason, I mainly picked up on harder stuff. I always wanted something that was faster, that I could feel the beat in my chest. And that's how I sort of got into heavy metal later on. And my mother gave me a guitar when I was about 12. And I learned how to play guitar sort of learned how to play guitar. Took some classes when I was in high school also, but really didn't learn, like, my whole body learn it until I realized that the Ramones were just 4 chords, bar chords that I could easily do. And after that, my whole world opened up. And I've been playing guitar ever since, electric guitar, heavy punk stuff. And then, later on in high school, high school was in the early 90s. So you had tons of music coming out, tons of interesting music in the hard rock genre. You had the first 9 Inch Nails album. You had not the first Ministry album, but an amazing Ministry album that really broke wide with A Mind Is a Terrible Thing to Taste. And that kind of music just fascinated me. And I had a friend in high school who introduced me to a band called Killing Joke. And so that kind of music just overwhelmed me. It was a mixture of tribal beats and heavy guitars, catchy rhythms. For me, I like pop. I like catchy stuff. So that's also what interested me and what I write. I like to write stuff that's catchy, that's got a good rhythm, and that's got a good energy to it.
That's amazing.
That's music.
I have you met Robin? Robin, have you met Robin?
I don't know. I'm bad with names, so.
He has a label, and I have him on the podcast because and I have another musician too, and the passion that what I try to explain to people is like the special interest. It feels like it's you, right? It feels so a part of you. And so I love talking to people who have like these deep, deep, deep passions for things that go further than what most people do, right? So I thought that was cool. And then the fact that why are you doing 2 bands? That to me is very interesting.
Right. So I didn't get to that part. So the Raygun Girls, I started in 2004. The Raygun Girls, and it was an actual band with my friend, with a couple of my friends, and that went on until 2009. In 2009, I had my 3rd heart surgery, and it was an emergency surgery. And pretty much after that, it was like I can't play live anymore, because I play hard and heavy music, and you can't just stand, especially when you feel the music behind you, the guitars, the drums behind you in your chest. You can't stand still. And because of my heart condition and having had a 3rd heart surgery, I just can't play live anymore. So the band sort of fizzled, but I couldn't stop making music, so I decided to keep the name. So about 3 years ago, probably about 4 years ago, I realized that the Raygun Girls was very serious type of music, and it's darker, it's more serious, it's more on the electronic side. But I also like other types of music, and I like to play other types of music. And about 3 years ago, I really felt like I was ready to do something more fun.
Yes.
So I sort of split the two sides of me. So Titanosaur is about more fun music, more I guess guitar oriented rather than electronic. So that's Titanosaur, and the other one is the Raygun Girls.
It's actually amazing. That was one of another things. You had 3 open heart surgeries, right? You remind me of my friend. Her name is Michelle. She's in my group. She's, she has a rare chromosome disease. So by the time she was, I think I want to say 20, she's had 3 open heart surgeries because the chromosomes basically delete stuff. And so it's a really rare disease. And like right now she has her own podcast, but she's been very, very sick, right? And I love her because I love anybody with resilience. Like, you are my people. Like, anybody with grit, and like, you are my people. But so going back to having open hearts, now we have 2 questions. Okay, I don't think we're gonna follow the list I sent you preamble because
that's fine.
But now my 2 questions are: tell us, because there was tell us about your condition with your heart. And then tell us how that really affects your life?
My heart condition is due to Marfan syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
which is a connective tissue disorder, um, and it's interesting because autism is uh, I hate the word because it's just so negative sounding, but it is a comorbidity
Yeah.
with Marfan syndrome. EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is another popular one. You see a lot of people in autistic groups have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that is closely related to Marfan syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So Marfan syndrome is it affects the connective tissue. I have my connective tissue doesn't snap back like everybody else's, and your whole body, all your organs are made of connective tissue. The thing is that the heart doesn't rest; it's constantly expanding and contracting. So because my connective tissue doesn't contract like normal people's, there's also an arch coming out of the heart, the aortic arch, where there's a lot of pressure that the heart pumps and pushes a lot of blood out through the aortic arch. So the blood bangs against the arch, and the arch normally expands and contracts. But for someone with Marfan, it just expands and gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and then breaks.
Yeah.
So for people with Marfan, usually they see a cardiologist frequently and have frequent echocardiograms or MRIs to check the size of your aorta, see if it's growing. And so mine grew fast at one point, and I had to have surgery to change it before it broke. So it was
Mm-hmm.
more preventative. And then, unfortunately, um, they put in one that was a little too small the first time, so they had to. So I had to go in again for surgery. So that was like a year and a half, 2 years after the first one. That was back in '96. And then in 2009, I've always had mitral valve prolapse, which is the valve inside the heart. The flaps were too big, so they couldn't close properly, and so blood would leak back and forth. That's mitral valve prolapse. But for me in 2009, two of the flaps broke, and so basically blood was going back into my lungs and drowning me, and so I had to go in for surgery to get that fixed.
This is the
So
interesting
that's
part.
how it
Sorry. Can you,
affects.
this is the part I found
Yeah.
you part where it was like you had like your blood was drowning you, right? But you said like you
Yes.
used Tai Chi breathing methods to basically save you, right?
Yes. Yes. And well, yeah, it's not necessarily Tai Chi breathing method, but it's a method that actually singers learn too, how to breathe. Um, but I so my family was diagnosed with Marfan. My mother, my uncles, my aunt, we were all diagnosed back in the early '80s.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happened that one of my oldest uncle, he collapsed while he was playing basketball, and they took him to the hospital, and he just happened to be at a hospital in New York where they were studying it because it was still new. um, it was in the mid to late '70s where they started discovering Marfan, or not discovering it but paying more attention to it. And so he just happened to end up in a hospital where they were studying it. And so they said, oh, look, we have a whole family here that we can study. So the doctors actually came over to our house
Uh-huh.
and did all the tests and everything. And so they diagnosed all of us. So my mother didn't want me to have to go through the surgeries or put them off as much as possible, surgeries and
Mm-hmm.
medication, because you generally put on beta blockers as young as possible to keep your heart from your aorta from expanding to prevent surgery. However, there are also side effects from beta blockers, especially back in the '80s when they were still uh, learning about beta blockers. Um, so um, so yeah, she was looking for alternatives. So my mother went into Eastern medicine because she couldn't do anything in Western medicine. So she looked into Buddhism. She looked into different exercises, yoga, all of that. And she ended up with Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
So she had me taking Tai Chi through a friend of aunt's. We found somebody to teach me. Starting around 14, I think it was, I started taking Tai Chi classes.
I
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
it's so let me get this straight. Like I just want to recalibrate this picture because I don't think everyone else sees what I see. But you knew you had a heart issue, like a heart condition, and you still were like, I want to still do Scream. I still want to do music live.
Right. Yeah.
Why?
Right. So, well, this was a struggle that I had with my mom because my mother was, the Beatles and Beethoven, and although I think Beethoven is very heavy metal if you turn up the volume loud enough. But she constantly was trying to tell me get into other music because that loud music is affecting your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't. It was a need to feel that beat that for me only heavy metal and hard rock have. That I could feel it and the chugging in the guitars. And actually, I hadn't made this connection till just now, but it's sort of been building for the past few months. I've always said that I like that the D chord for some reason resonates with me, and a lot of music at the time was getting into this drop D tuning. You had Soundgarden and some Black Sabbath songs, and I was starting to hear that, and that resonates with me. Like I could sit with my acoustic guitar
Mm-hmm.
and just pluck the low D string because I have it tuned down. I could just pluck that and hear it reverberate and zone out. So, that there was that need to hear that and make.
So do you think, because I have like a long history with, I work with people with autism okay, no, it wasn't called autism back then when they were diagnosed because most people that I work with are over the age of like 60. And even myself, like I kind of, because my brother's autistic, he was diagnosed when he was 10, but I never got any I got treated for like, not treated, that's not the right word, but because I wasn't verbal because I was always so in my head, because everything is so exciting. But do you do you think it's because your connection to music is a sensory thing? Almost, it sounds like it's because it's sensory seeking. Does that sound right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a sensory thing. I feel better when the music is enveloping me.
Yeah. Do you also consider? I would love. Do you also consider that you're stemming? Because I think I love talking to people about their stemming. Because I feel like the overall broadening of stemming is the repetition of the certain behavior, right? So I was thinking about that yesterday because I was listening to the same song.
Yeah. Well, I just came to the realization about I don't know, a few months ago that I had been stimming for a long time, but because of the way I do it, people just said, "Oh, he's a musician." I play air guitar. When I hear the music, my arm, and I've realized in the past couple of months that, like when I'm feeling super tired or falling asleep it's not a great thing, falling asleep while I'm driving. If I start air guitaring, I wake up. So yeah, I mean, so that movement and when I do this movement, it's not just the movement; it's I'm rubbing it against my arm, my leg.
Yeah.
So I'm strumming it, So that whole thing, I'm very very tactile.
Yeah.
For me, touch is a huge thing.
That's because you're the way you're talking. You really need Robin. Like you guys will connect because Robin has this thing about like his he has a deep love for music, like a deep love where he could he's went through the different industries in the UK and stuff like that. And when you hear him talk about why he likes pop, certain parts of pop, like where in the sound chords and what exactly, like people that, and he could tell you like the history of the music and how it was developed and where it comes from. Like you have that deep appreciation. Yep. And so my next question is how was the struggle? Well, what did you learn? Because there was a struggle. What did you learn?
Well, I went. My connection with music was it for me. It felt at the time was okay. I like music, but in high school I was in a very deep depression. My mother attributed it to the divorce between my mom and my dad, which happened when I was 6, and the weird relationship that I had with my dad, and he kept disappearing and stuff like that. So that's what we attributed it to, my violent explosions and things like that I would have, which now looking back with an autism diagnosis, I was having meltdowns. I have violent meltdowns. That's basically what it comes down to. But it was music, Megadeth, Suicidal Tendencies, those two bands in particular I would listen to a lot. And that got me through because of the speed, and especially Suicidal Tendencies. Their lyrics are super emotional. And so that really helped me get through high school.
Yeah.
So I that's where the connection in my head anyway became more of an emotional one. Struggle wise, I mean, I struggle with a lot of things. My wife and I, we do couples therapy for the past year. We've been married for 20 years about. But we were just talking about this yesterday. I'm still struggling as a musician because I deal with something that a lot of musicians deal with: not earning money with music versus spending money to make music.
Yeah.
You know, how do I do that?
That's why you should talk to Robin.
How do I allow myself to spend money and make the music if I'm not making any money from the music? You know, so that struggle is right now.
This is so the thing I love about Robin is he had the same problem, and what he ended up finding was a different outlet for that, right? Because he does have his own label where he's hiring musicians, and he said it, like, when you're a musician, you have to pay for your promotions, and those promotions are expensive. And he said, like, having all these things, it's really hard because you have to do a lot of free work, right? And when you're a musician, it's hard, you know. Something I can say proudly about Coexistent is we're trying to find that gap. Where's the connecting points on trying to get more musicians a more stable income? That's something we are looking at, and looking at ways to help them promote and help them monetize, in ways that they can connect into different industries. Because for me personally, I know a lot of different ways to build brands and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people I don't think a lot of people understand is musicians don't make money on their music. They don't. They make money off their brand. No. You know, they don't make money off their music. It's just not possible. I mean, it's possible. It's very, very possible. But you have to be touring like a lot. You know, a lot of live gigs, and even all that stuff. So there's branding behind that. You know, when you have brand power, you can do a lot. And I think a lot of things that coexist, and I hope we put together, is ways for musicians to brand themselves effectively so that they can make money. Is because the thing about anyway, this is a whole different conversation with that. That's something I'm very passionate about.
Absolutely, yeah. And most musicians, right, make money from live gigs. They don't make them from streaming or anything like that.
Yeah.
I can't play live gigs.
Yeah.
so so I don't have that. But no, absolutely, the branding thing, that's from the beginning. uh, as wanting to get into the music industry, I've always read about it. I interned in college at labels, so I knew a lot going in,
Mm-hmm.
starting when I started bands. So yeah, uh, the Raygun Girls has a specific brand, a logo, colors, an aesthetic, and Titanosaur does also.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's all I can do, since I'm not out playing live, kind of
well,
thing.
yeah, but I feel like so there was this I always so I'm heavily obsessed with BTS. Um More so because they have their story itself. They were supposed to fail. They should have failed. And I always like to see when people were this sounds so bad when let me rephrase that. When people overcome their stuff, I'm just always like, and just how do you do that, right? Like, I don't want them to fail. I don't want anyone to fail. But that was just so inspiring to me. And what I find with them is like you could be like not selling stickers, but like journals. Like it's almost free now to do merchandise, to market merchandise. It's almost free now to create a course. It's almost free now to connect with video gamers and put music into their games, connect with singers and help them audio and all this. Like it's not free, but you can figure ways to make money off of that. Especially there's this okay, so side story. I'm very obsessive with culture, and how cultures will like develop and break. Um, and so I don't know, like okay, let me rephrase that. I'm obsessed with internet culture. So the different sub microcultures in this internet. So I don't know if I always talk about study culture, but within study culture, do you know who's getting a lot of exposure? Like these very, very, very cheap, not cheap, these very, very like, not cheap, these very, these DJs, like chill hip hop.
Uh-huh.
They're getting
Yep.
so much exposure. Not only that, but they have their own Funko Pops. And so now you could see them. Yeah. Oh, and I've never heard of these, like some of these names I've never heard of, but they're making money from the streaming. And then there's the PayPal route. So some people will literally just give them like $2 or $3. So it's kind of the same thing as giving live, where when you play it outside, someone throws you money here and there. And then Patreon too, right? So there's a lot of ways. I have a million and a gazillion ideas. But going back to
Yeah,
our
there are
conversation,
definitely a lot of ways. Yeah.
yeah, there's a million ways. It's just about um, it's a lot of work.
Yes.
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 But going back on topic, because we do only have about 10 more minutes before my Zoom is like not going to be happy. So wow, you know what? You kind of really answered most of my questions in like a summary. So that's amazing. That's really, really amazing. And so one of my things are, what are some of your hobbies outside of music? Like what makes you happy through, from other than music?
Well, I think just pop culture in general is a hobby. When I was younger, it was comic books and movies. Now,
Mm-hmm.
and TV, comic books, movies, TV, radio. I would take everything in it, and now it's politics, movies, TV, music. Um, those are my hobbies. With now, I'm starting to get into, because of the band. I'm starting to get into filming videos, music videos. So that's a new thing where I'm teaching myself Adobe After Effects. Um, and well, what makes me happy? I mean, I have two daughters that are constantly making me happy. I mean, I'm the stay-at-home dad. Well, I was until this whole pandemic started. Um, so yeah, they grew up with me. So
Aw, that's so cute. I want to like reiterate that because like the last guy that I had, he's a musician too, and he has a daughter. He found out because he got his daughter diagnosed. Um,
yeah, I heard that one. Yeah.
yeah, and it's such a beautiful story, right? Because the thing about it is, the thing what drives me personally is to see a world where more people are like, I'm autistic and I'm proud. Like I got sensory issues ever, but I can see connections that y'all can't see. I like this. This feels like more sensitive, like, you know, but also letting them know they can
Well,
have a
yeah,
huh?
exactly. Yeah, and that's how it is in our house because, and for me growing up, I would what you've heard me do now. I stutter
Yeah.
because I have trouble getting the words to pass through my mouth. My mother, I pointed that out to my mother when I was a kid, and she said, "No, you don't. You're just making that up." So that shut me down immediately, and I stopped stuttering. So then I became the guy who doesn't say much because I need to think about what I'm saying before it comes out, or else
Yeah.
I stutter.
Yeah.
Um, and then my grandmother would call me lazy, and a whole thing growing up. So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't how we brought up our kids.
Yeah.
And here in this house, we celebrate being weird. And my wife has ADD. My wife has ADHD, and we noticed in my oldest daughter that something was going on. And then my wife put it together, and she said she has ADHD, and
Mhm.
definitely does. Um, and yeah, so at the dinner table, I talk about being autistic and things that I noticed on myself, and we make it's an open conversation in our house. And my youngest has I've always thought she's autistic. We got them both evaluated, and they were said to be um, depressed, but
Mhm.
they're I mean, my oldest has depression, but they didn't see any ADHD or anything like that. I was like, that's
It's
not.
always such a beautiful thing, right? When you think about the, like, I've never been diagnosed with anything. Well, okay, let me phrase this. They've, so I'm really like, if you can get me to focus, I'm good, but you can't get me to focus. And so when I was growing up, like, it just meant that I was slow. So they would put me in classes because they thought that I couldn't understand, right? So they'll put
Mm.
me in like an extra speech class or extra spelling class. And then like once they got me to focus, they're like, oh my gosh, she's really smart. So then they put me on harder classes. And that is a struggle with ADHD because the thing is like it's you're in your own world, right? And that was the next thing I was
Yeah.
gonna is
Uh,
I feel sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I think having a place where I think for me myself, like being able to talk openly about it it allows you to not worry about it. It allows you to just be. And I hope that more people are willing to open a space for people where they could just be, you know? So that's my last thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we wanted for our kids. Both of my wife and myself have grew up latchkey kids and issues with our parents. Hers was much more difficult in a different way, but yeah, being open. I in some of these autistic groups, well, autism groups that I'm in on Facebook, I see the question come up every once in a while. Um, should I tell my kids that they are autistic?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why not.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. I mean, we deal with this. I deal with that also in the Marfan groups that I'm in on Facebook. Should I tell
Yeah.
my kid that they have Marfan? Well, why not? What's wrong with it? I mean, I don't see what's
Have
wrong
you?
with it. You know,
Yeah. I think it's that. So, because like in my family, like, well, in my culture, there's no such thing. Mental illness isn't real, you know. So you just that like there's no such thing. So,
right.
and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
reason they said, huh?
yeah, and that's one of the problems that I'm having with my grandmother, explaining to her about me being autistic,
Yeah.
and she's not really there understanding. But she's 86 now, so cut her slack.
Well, that was one of the things that I had with my parents because, like, you could see that my father was a big picture thinker. And when you're a big picture thinker, you're taking in a lot of information to make that picture happen. So you're connecting with so much. That's what ADHD is, right? I'm not saying he's ADHD, but, and my mother is very, very smart at picking up little things. Very smart. It's not the conversation, right? And so the construct that gets me in, I think what everyone's afraid of is like, are you gonna let, when you get like, when you were told that you had autism, did that make you feel like you can't do the things you wanted to do anymore? And that's what everyone's afraid of, is that if we tell them, what will be their way of perceiving the world?
Right. For me, it was a huge relief, because ever since I was young, I've been saying my brain is broken.
Mm-hmm.
There's something wrong, and I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
And I knew from the beginning that, well, I didn't not know, but I always thought from the beginning, I'm missing something everybody else got, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so, and I dealt with a lot of depressions over the years,
Yeah.
and that was part of it.
And
So
that's
for
something
me,
that
it was fantastic.
I think that's amazing. Because I was gonna ask you, if we have time, if my Zoom doesn't kick us out. Sorry. Um, I'm scared to ask this question, because this question is like a little bit heavy, because I was gonna ask you, what are your mental health toolboxes? Like, what do you use to take care of your mental health? But I feel like this is a good opportunity to say that I might just have to bring you back another time so we can hold a conversation around that.
I would love to come back. Absolutely. I love talking about this stuff.
I think this stuff, like, me and Rob are gonna have another thing about this, and I would love to, before we go, talk more about your current band and where people can find you when they want to connect with you.
Sure. Titanosaur1.bandcamp.com. That's where all the music is. I got a new album came out December 4th, so just last week, I guess. And 13 tracks on there. Fantastic. I keep putting out videos, music videos. I actually just did a Jingle Bells cover, a punk heavy metal Jingle Bells cover, which is really funny. So that'll be up in a few days.
That's amazing. I know I'm playing catch up on everyone's stuff. So send me the link, and so I can post it in the description. Everything will be in the description. So that they can also listen to it as well. And then I'm probably gonna repost. I post everyone's stuff in my group, so everyone can connect with everyone, and like we can see each other's work. So yes, but definitely had to bring you back, because there's so many, your mind, my friend, how you think about the world. We had to go in conversation about your world views. We had to go, like, you're just a very interesting person. So
I have a lot of information I've been collecting for 45 years. So yeah.
that's exciting. So is there anything else you would like to add to people, tell people?
No, what I always tell people is just take care of each other. That's all we're here to do, take care of each other.
I'm excited. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming to the Coexistent podcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.